You picked the wrong black woman to humiliate today. That thought, cold and sharp as a razor, remained locked behind Major Maya Taylor's unblinking stare. In front of her, under the sterile, buzzing fluorescent lights of the TSA checkpoint, Supervisor Carlson held her military ID in one hand and her boarding pass in the other. His smirk was a greasy, self-satisfied thing, a mask for the petty tyranny he was about to unleash. "This pass is invalid," he declared, his voice loud enough for the shuffling line of travelers to hear. Maya said nothing. Her silence seemed to fuel his arrogance. "And this ID looks a little suspicious to me." He held it up to the light as if it were a cheap forgery, his thumb smudging the corner where the eagle insignia gleamed. Maya's gaze didn't waver. She stood with a stillness that was almost unnatural, her shoulders perfectly squared, her posture radiating a discipline that Carlson, in his ill-fitting blue uniform, could never comprehend. He saw a black woman in civilian clothes, jeans, and a simple leather jacket, and his mind filled in the blanks with its own ugly stereotypes. He didn't see the truth. He didn't see the hunter. "I said, it's suspicious," he repeated, louder this time, prodding for a reaction. "You people always try to get away with things. You people." The words hung in the air, thick and poisonous. A few people in line shifted uncomfortably, looking at their phones, at the floor, anywhere but at the scene unfolding. Carlson thrived on this. He was the king of his little checkpoint kingdom. Maya simply maintained eye contact. The identification is valid, supervisor. Her voice was even, low, and devoid of emotion. It was the voice of someone who had given commands in situations where the wrong tone meant people died. To Carlson, it sounded like defiance. It sounded like a challenge to his authority, and he couldn't stand it. Talking back to a federal agent? That's a serious offense. He puffed out his chest. "I think we need to have a longer conversation." With a dramatic flourish, he tore her boarding pass in half. Rip. The sound was sharp, decisive. A collective gasp rippled through the line. He'd crossed the line from harassment to outright aggression. He tossed the two pieces onto the gray plastic bin with her laptop. "You're coming with me." He gestured with his head toward a frosted glass door marked Authorized Personnel Only. The secondary screening room. The box. Maya gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. She placed her phone in the bin, followed by her watch, her movements economical and precise. She wasn't scared. She wasn't intimidated. She was assessing, cataloging every detail of Carlson's face, the mole over his right eye, the faint scent of stale coffee on his breath, the way his name tag, Carlson T, was slightly crooked, was filed away in a mental folder, stored with the same precision she used to memorize enemy air defense grids. As she stepped toward the door, he made a show of grabbing her arm. It was a mistake. The moment his fingers touched her jacket, he felt it. Her arm was like forged steel. There was no give, no softness. It was the arm of someone whose body was a weapon. He quickly let go, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he masked it with another sneer. Inside, the room was small, gray, and smelled of disinfectant. A metal table was bolted to the floor. Carlson dumped the contents of her bin onto it. Her laptop, her phone, her keys, the two halves of her boarding pass. He picked up her military ID again. "Major Maya Taylor," he read aloud with mock reverence. "United States Air Force. Impressive. Where'd you get this?" "Online." Maya remained silent, standing perfectly still just inside the door. Her calmness was starting to unnerve him. It wasn't the reaction he was used to. He wanted tears, pleading anger. He was getting nothing. Just that unnerving, analytical stare. "Cat got your tongue? Or are you finally realizing how much trouble you're in?" He leaned across the table, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I can make this all go away. A simple apology. A little respect. Or I can put you on the no-fly list. Permanently. Your choice." It was a pathetic abuse of power, and they both knew it. But as he looked at her, searching for a crack in her composure, he saw something that made his blood run cold. She was smiling. It wasn't a real smile. It was a tight, mirthless line, a predator's grin. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a sheep. Carlson had no idea, That smile was the end of his career and maybe his entire life. He had just locked himself in a small room with one of the most dangerous women on the planet, and he was too stupid to even realize it. But how did it get to this? An hour earlier, none of this was supposed to happen. An hour earlier, Maya Taylor was just another anonymous face in the bustling terminal of a major international airport. She was coming home. The kind of home that didn't involve a military base. For the first time in 18 months, she was just Maya. No call sign, no rank, no mission. She was wearing comfortable jeans, worn-in boots, and a supple black leather jacket that had seen more of the world than most diplomats. In her hands, she held a thick, dog-eared book, Advanced Aerodynamics of the F-35 Lightning II. It wasn't exactly light reading. She shifted her weight, the long line for security snaking forward at a glacial pace. She was patient. She'd learned patience in environments that made an airport queue look like a paradise. Cramped cockpits on 14-hour sorties, remote outposts waiting for extraction. This was nothing. When she finally reached the front, she placed her carry-on bag in a gray bin, then her laptop, then her boots and her jacket. She moved with an efficiency that was second nature, her actions clean and purposeful. The TSA agent checking IDs, a young woman with tired eyes, glanced at her driver's license, then at her face, and waved her through. No problem. It was at the conveyor belt that things went wrong. Her bin was flagged, diverted to a separate line for additional screening. A minor inconvenience. It happened. But the man who approached her bin was Supervisor Carlson. He carried himself with an air of unearned importance, his walk a self-conscious swagger. He picked up her leather jacket, handling it with disdain. Then he saw the book. He read the title, his lip curling in a sneer. "Quite the expert, are we?" he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. Maya didn't reply. She just waited. He unzipped her carry-on and started rummaging through it with unnecessary roughness, pulling out neatly folded clothes and dropping them on the stainless steel counter. He found nothing. No liquids, no sharp objects, nothing out of the ordinary. Just the belongings of a woman traveling light. He seemed disappointed. Then he picked up her wallet, which she placed in the bin with her jacket. He pulled out her military ID. This was the moment everything changed. He studied it, his eyes narrowing. He looked at her address, then back at her face. It was an address in a neighborhood that people like Carlson prejudged. Westfield Heights, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. He looked at her again, his gaze lingering, as if her very presence in this airport was an anomaly he needed to correct. He seemed to be searching for a discrepancy, any excuse to escalate. This was where the pattern began. Maya had seen it before. A white businessman in a crisp suit ahead of her had a laptop that wouldn't turn on, a clear security violation. Carlson had joked with him, shared a laugh, and sent him on his way with a pat on the back. But for her, for Major Maya Taylor, a valid military ID with an address he didn't like was cause for suspicion. "This requires further verification," he announced. He didn't look at her. He was performing for his colleagues, establishing his authority. That's when Maya spoke for the first time. "On what grounds, Supervisor?" she asked, her voice calm and level. "Your regulations state that additional screening requires reasonable suspicion. Please articulate your suspicion." She wasn't being aggressive. She was being precise. She knew the rules. And that, more than anything, seemed to infuriate him. A black woman from Westfield Heights quoting regulations at him? It was a disruption to his worldview. His face hardened. "My suspicion," he said, leaning in, "is that you have an attitude problem, and I'm the one who's going to fix it." Back in the gray, sterile room, the air was thick with Carlson's ego. He was pacing now, a small predator in his cage, enjoying his power. "So, Major," he began, the title dripping with sarcasm. "No priors. Clean record. You just seem to have a problem with authority." He picked up her jacket from the table. "What's in the pockets?" he demanded. "My pockets are empty, Supervisor. You are not authorized to search my personal belongings without a warrant or my consent." "I did not consent." Her voice was a flat line. Every word was a brick in the wall she was constructing around him. He scoffed, tossing the jacket back on the table. "Consent," he laughed. "That's cute. In this room, my authority is all the consent I need. He was getting more frustrated by the second. Her calm, her refusal to be intimidated, it was like she was speaking a language he didn't understand. He decided to escalate. He needed to break her. "You know, we get a lot of fakes," he said, tapping her military ID. "People wanting the discounts, the respect, but they haven't earned it. Did you earn this, Maya?" The use of her first name was a deliberate act of disrespect. He was trying to strip her of her rank, of her identity. He took a step closer, invading her personal space. "I think you're a fraud, and I'm going to prove it." His plan was as stupid as it was illegal. He was going to provoke her into a physical reaction. He reached for her again, this time grabbing the front of her leather jacket. "Let's see what you're hiding under here," he growled, his face inches from hers. And then he pulled. He pulled hard. The jacket zipper gave way with a sharp, metallic sound, and the world stopped. Everything just stopped. Carlson's smug expression froze, then melted in his slack-jawed disbelief. The air left his lungs in a silent whoosh. Revealed beneath her simple gray t-shirt was not what he expected. It was a testament, a story written in flesh. A thick, jagged scar started just below her left collarbone, slicing down across her sternum, disappearing beneath the waistband of her jeans. It wasn't a neat, surgical line. It was a brutal, chaotic mark of violence, a puckered, angry ridge of tissue that spoke of shattered metal and extreme velocity. It wasn't a scar. It was a map of a war fought at 30,000 feet. The silence was broken by a sharp knock on the door. "Carlson, everything okay in there?" It was the voice of the airport's head of security, a man named Henderson, a retired Air Force colonel. Carlson didn't answer. He couldn't. He was paralyzed. Henderson knocked again, then used his master key to open the door. "Carlson," he trailed off as he took in the scene. He saw Carlson, pale and trembling. And he saw Maya, standing calm, her jacket open. And he saw the scar. Unlike Carlson, Henderson knew exactly what he was looking at. He'd seen photos of it in classified after-action reports. He'd heard whispers of the pilot who'd survived it. A pilot with a legendary call sign. He slowly, instinctively, came to attention. "Oh my God." He breathed, his voice filled with reverence. That's from Operation Predator. I've only seen it in the Pentagon debriefs." He looked from the scar to Maya's face, his eyes wide with realization. "You're Valkyrie." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. He was standing in the presence of a living legend. And the idiot supervisor in front of him had just tried to intimidate her. Henderson took a half step into the room. "Ma'am," he said, his voice now formal and laced with a profound respect. "Colonel, my deepest apologies. I had no idea." He turned his head slowly, his eyes fixing on Carlson. The awe was gone, replaced by an arctic fury. "Carlson," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What did you do?" Carlson just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The name Colonel had finally landed in his brain, shattering his pathetic little reality. Henderson didn't wait for an answer. He pulled his own phone from his pocket. He wasn't calling the airport police. This was far beyond their pay grade. He dialed a direct line to the command post at the nearest Air Force base. "This is Henderson at the International Airport," he said, his voice crisp. "I need to speak to the base commander. Now." He held Carlson in his icy glare. A moment later, his posture straightened even more. "General, sir, Henderson here. I have a situation. I have Colonel Maya Valkyrie Taylor here at my facility." "Yes, sir. That Colonel Taylor." There was a pause. "No, sir, she's not okay. She's been improperly detained by one of my civilian supervisors." Another pause. "Yes, sir. I understand." He hung up. He looked at Maya. "They're on their way, Colonel." He then turned back to Carlson, who looked like he was about to be sick. "You will give me your badge. You will sit in that chair. You will not speak. You will not move. You will wait for the United States Air Force to arrive. Do you understand me?" Carlson, trembling, could only nod. Less than 10 minutes later, they heard it. The unmistakable sound of military boots moving in formation down the hallway. 2 Air Force Security Forces airmen, clad in tactical gear, entered the room first, their eyes scanning every corner. They were followed by a captain, his face a mask of grim determination. He completely ignored Carlson and Henderson. His eyes found Maya immediately. He snapped to attention, his salute a sharp, perfect motion. "Colonel Taylor, ma'am. Captain Price. The base commander sent us to escort you. Your transport is ready on the tarmac." The authority in the room was absolute. It was military. Carlson finally understood. He hadn't just messed with a soldier. He had declared war on an entire institution. Captain Price turned to Henderson. "Sir, we will be taking custody of this situation. The Office of Special Investigations has been notified. Their team is about 5 minutes out." The mention of OSI, the Air Force's version of the FBI, made the color drain completely from Carlson's face. This wasn't just about losing his job anymore. This was about federal charges. The fallout was swift and brutal. Carlson was fired before the OSI team had even finished their preliminary interviews. He faced a slew of federal charges that would ruin what was left of his life. The TSA issued a formal, public apology to Colonel Taylor and the United States Air Force. New nationwide training protocols regarding the treatment of military personnel were implemented within a month. But the story doesn't end there. The final scene isn't in a courtroom. It's 2 weeks later in the cockpit of an F-35 high above the clouds. Maya Taylor, call sign Valkyrie, is back where she belongs. As she banks the jet, sunlight glints off the canopy. The world below is a patchwork of peace. A peace she fought for. A peace that left its mark. Some scars are earned so that others can stay safe. Respect those who bear the weight of that honor, for you never know what battles they have won, just so you could live in peace. Did that story grab your attention? Hit that like button right now to support more hard-hitting stories of justice and honor like this one. Subscribe to our channel, because the voice of justice deserves to be heard.